Welcome, I'm so glad you all could join me. I'm Chavah and you're watching Ask a Midwife. Hey everyone, it's Chavah, the Ask a Midwife channel. Thank you for joining me. I would like to talk to you about big babies, okay? Your baby is so big, it's not gonna fit. Your baby is gonna get stuck. Your baby is gonna have a shoulder dystocia. Your baby can't be born. You need a C-section. Have you heard these things? I have. I've heard women calling me, writing me, coming to me, Chavah, I don't know what to do. My doctor said my baby's too big. My doctor said my baby won't come out. My doctor says it's dangerous. My doctor said the baby's over 4 kilos. The baby's over 9 pounds. The baby's going to get stuck. I can't have my baby vaginally. I can't have a natural birth with my baby. My baby's too big. Okay, this is a really, unfortunately, it hurts my heart. It's a really, really common thing. It's a common thing that women experience. It's a common thing that people say to women when their babies are on the larger side, okay? So people meaning the care providers, the doctors, and maybe a midwife. It's also possible that midwives could be afraid, could be concerned, and possibly some of the time with good reason, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about. So the thing I want to delve into is, first of all, what is a big baby? Okay, a baby can be in kilo. They would say here at the hospital I work with that 4 kilo, over 4 kilo is a big baby. 4 kilo, I'm not sure exactly in pounds. It could be around somewhere in the vicinity of, the upper 8s, 9 to 9 pounds. The upper 8 pounds plus to 9 pounds. And it's not really a super huge baby. It is on the big side. I would say like 7.5 pounds is considered an average size baby. Maybe a little over 3 kilos, an average size baby. And if a baby is bigger, then there's a whole lot of protocols that hospitals have regarding, and some midwives as well. But in general, the protocols are more strict inside of a hospital. In our hospital, if a baby's over 4 kilo or estimated to be over 4 kilo through an ultrasound, then she's not allowed to do certain things. Like she's not allowed to go into the natural birthing room. She's not allowed to birth outside of like the typical hospital room, and they might recommend that she have certain interventions, especially if it's her first baby. So my experience as a home birth midwife, as a doula with a lot of hospital birth experience, more than 20 years, and I've seen a lot of big babies be born. And what I mean is 9 pounds, 10 pounds, upwards to 11-pound babies, big babies with normal, healthy pregnant women with no gestational diabetes, with absolutely no problem whatsoever getting born, okay? It's true that if a woman has gestational diabetes, the type of big baby that she might, grow would be a different type of baby. The body is formed a bit differently. It's called macrosomia, macrosomic meaning big body. But basically that type of body from a gestational diabetic mother. Not all pregnant women with gestational diabetes grow this kind of baby. Most of the time it's an unchecked case, meaning not controlled, okay? And that can cause a lot of other problems. One of the problems being a bigger baby with certain risks. Other problems, with that I'm going to not get into now. But the big baby, just in a normal, healthy pregnant woman, well nourished, well hydrated, it's a sign of health. Okay? Most of the time, a woman will not grow a baby that's too big to pass through her own body. In a special case where a really large man, really large father, like let's say, I always used to give this example, a Samoan man and a tiny, tiny petite, 5 foot, 4 foot, 10 Asian woman, and they have a big baby. There might be an issue there. Issues with, in another situation there might be an issue with a pelvic deformity, or a situation where the woman had an injury in her, maybe a car accident, she suffered pelvic injuries. So in general, we believe that if the baby's in a good position, even a large baby will come out more easily than a smaller baby in a bad position. Now, I don't mean a breech baby versus a head down baby. A head down baby, there are 360 degrees of being head down, okay? So I'm talking about not just, you know, head down, but I'm talking about well flexed. You know, the baby's head needs to be flexed. The chin to the chest, the chin to the chest. The head needs to be straight and not tipped to the side. There's a lot of different ways that malpresentation can make an issue for the birth and slow things down and hold things back and really cause a lot of discomfort, cause a lot of pain, cause a lot of dysfunction. And that's with even a smaller baby, okay? Generally bigger babies, I don't know, I kind of think of it like gravity. Like it's almost like they help, that by virtue of how large they are, they kind of help come down, especially in a well-supported woman, a woman who's coping well. She's, you know, she's in a good position. Her own ergonomics, her own physical positioning makes a big difference when she's birthing. Obviously, I'm going to get into that in a different video, but this is just talking about big babies, okay? So my experience as a midwife is that big babies come out. Big babies don't cause more tearing. Big babies don't cause more slow labors. They don't even cause all the time a longer pushing stage. Now, when it's our first baby and she's never given birth before, there might be a longer pushing stage just in general. I've witnessed small babies giving their mothers a little bit of trouble, and not necessarily large babies, but everyone has a story, and you can hear, you know, the woman talk about birthing her 10-pound kid, and birthing any baby is a big experience for the body. It's a big deal to push a baby out, and whether it be a 7-pound baby, an 8-pound baby, a 9-pound baby, it's really not, don't think you would say, well, look, if you talk to a woman that's had a little tiny baby early, you know, I had a 36-weeker, she was 5.5 pounds, she just fell right out, and then I carried my next baby to 42 weeks, and it was, you know, she was 9.5 pounds, and I really had to work with her. That's a commonly told story, and I've heard it a lot, and it doesn't mean that bigger babies are harder to get out. It just means that when your baby is premature and small, she can just slip right out, whereas a larger baby, you know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, at full term, an 8-pound baby is easier than a 9-pound baby, okay? Now, as far as the actual issues with getting, you know, told that you need a C-section or told that your baby can't be born vaginally, I feel so bad for women who are told this. Why? Because most of the time, if those women were supported and they went on to have, you know, they went into labor when their body was ready, they were supported, they were hydrated, they were fed, they were given good tips on positioning, they were given good care, there was someone there to, you know, to support them and massage them or just aid them and guide them in whatever way they needed, those babies would, they would rarely have issues. But when you have a care provider who's afraid, when you have a care provider who's worried about, you know, complications and lawsuits, I'm not saying that all care providers who say your baby is large are terrified of being sued. But in general, it's easier to be sued for, you know, not doing something than it is for doing something. I think that's a general rule. Okay, so a care provider that just left well enough alone, okay, your baby's big, but we'll just wait and see. If something happens with that baby, it's easier to sue the doctor than if they were to intervene and then something would have happened in the process of the intervention. In general, you'd need to ask questions of your care provider. Is my baby healthy? Is there anything that gives you reason to believe that I can't birth my baby vaginally? Is there anything in my history that makes you see that I would have a problem? I mean, if they can't give you any concrete information, it's just a concern, I really would advise you not to buy into it. Now, you really need to get an individual you know, care provider on to talk to you specifically. Don't take this video and say, well, Chavah said in her video that big babies come out, and so my baby will come out as well, because I don't know all the information in your particular situation, so I really can't comment on your particular situation, which is why you need a care provider who actually knows you. Some women come to a time in their pregnancy where the care provider, who seemed like a really supportive care provider, and says, guess what, your baby's big and you need a C-section, or we should induce. That's another thing. It's not just like we should C-section you, but we should induce. And the mother's like, well, I really don't want to induce before the full term. Also, ultrasounds can be off. It can be a pound in either direction off, or half a kilo off in either direction, which means if they say the baby's 9 pounds, the baby might be 8.5 or 9.5. So, or 8 or not, or 8 or 10 pounds. And if they say the baby's 4 kilos, the baby might be 3.5 kilos or 4.5 kilos. So it's really hard to say. But in general, the issue is not the amount of grams or the amount of ounces. The issue is the baby is the baby in a good position? Is the mother's body healthy? Is the uterus healthy? Is the uterus functioning? Is the uterus have force and power? And is there anything in the way of the it's a whole dynamic that as a midwife we're trained to look at the whole woman. We're trained to look at the whole dynamic. Okay. Let's say she had all of her babies. She had 3 or 4 babies already, and they were all born around 9 pounds, and they were all born at like 42 weeks. And she has a new doctor, and the baby's looking larger, and she's 39, 40 weeks, and the doctor said we have to induce because your baby's going to be big. That woman has every right in the book, every right to go to her doctor and say, listen, my history shows that I have big babies with no problem. I have, I carry later than the average woman, and I really need you to be, to be respectful. Now, a lot of times the care provider's like, I can't do that, and then the woman is forced to either sign out against her, against medical advice, or she needs to find a new care provider, which isn't always easy, especially in insurance. There's not a lot of doctors that you can find at the last minute, so it poses a whole lot of problems. But that's why it's a good rule of thumb to have these kinds of conversations with your care provider earlier on. Like, okay, so this is my history. How do you feel? Like when you're interviewing a care provider, how do you feel about me going post dates with a bigger baby? Or how do you feel about me, giving birth vaginally to or unmedicated or whatever you want, to discuss it with your care provider ahead of time so that you don't get taken by surprise when you're already, full term and you're being pressured. Because no one needs pressure to it's the antithesis. Pressure works against a woman's natural flow of hormones in the end of pregnancy, like her need to feel comfortable, her need to feel safe, her need to feel supported, her need to feel empowered, that someone's listening to her, that someone's respecting her. There's a whole lot of things that the woman needs in order to feel like she's in a good space and a safe space to give birth. And when you're getting pressured, when a woman's hearing these messages about her baby and the size and questions about her body's ability to actually give birth, it's really undermining, and it creates a lot of fear and insecurity and just a whole lot of things that aren't good at all for her. And so we really need to sort of, rather than wait to the end, you need to try to do your homework ahead of time. So basically, what to do when the care provider gives you these kinds of messages. I guess just have a really honest conversation, and in the end of the day, just know that if you can ask the questions, is there anything wrong right now? Is there anything that concerns you right now? Are we just being safe? Is this just a precaution? What kind of monitoring did you agree to? And to ask maybe figure out how much leeway you have, and then for sure you need a doula. You need a doula who can work with the care providers, who can work in it. I think women often feel insecure when they're going into a birthing situation, and so they want a doula who's like really they feel like that doula is going to fight for them. And I'm going to do I want to talk about doulas because I am a doula and a very successful doula, and I've had a lot of really good experiences, and also the way that I work with the hospital staff is really unique in terms of being a doula, because I really want to work with the hospital staff, and it's not about going in and sort of fighting for my lady, fighting for her. It's about, encouraging everyone to work together, including the hospital staff, including the nurses and the doctors and the midwives that are there, and that we all band together and we all, stick together in terms of the woman's best interest. So, and empowering the woman to communicate and empowering the woman to ask questions. This is all like these real subtle dynamics of being a good doula. So I want to do a special segment on that as well. But basically, she needs to get information, and she needs to get a bottom line from her care provider. If there really is a concern, then she needs to hear that out. But if there's really just a nervousness or a precaution or a protocol on the part of the doctor, the midwife, or the care provider, the mom needs to hear that, and she needs to try to understand what's going on. and to be able to make good decisions and feel empowered. A lot of times we go into a situation, we're sort of nervous about the birth. I wouldn't say afraid, but maybe like there's some concerns there. There's an unknown. Every birth is an unknown, and even if a woman's had, 4 or 5 babies, it's an unknown. She doesn't know what's going to happen. She doesn't know when it's going to happen. She doesn't know how it's going to happen. She doesn't know with whom it's going to happen, who is the care provider going to be, especially here in Israel. You go in and you get a really good doctor or you get a really good midwife, but you don't always know who it's going to be. Okay, so that's also an unknown, and it's hard. It's like we're giving up control. We're going in and it's like we're really at the mercy of who's there caring for us. Which in a way, in Israel, it's a little bit different, because even if your doctor has these advices for you, you can just say, okay, thank you very much, I'm going to go get monitored. And the hospital and your care provider in pregnancy they don't actually communicate. So it's a little bit of like, if there's any concern on the part of the doctor, they'll just send you to the hospital and you'll go into the labor and delivery, and the doctors there will care for you and check you and figure out what you need and what to suggest. But in terms of a midwife, it's different with a midwife. When you have a midwife, she's witnessed with her own hands the progress of your baby's growth. She really has a very good idea. When a woman comes to me and I feel her tummy and I feel the baby and I do something called palpation, which is different than palpitation, which has to do with the heart. I palpate the baby. I feel the baby, I assess the baby's position, I assess the baby's size, I assess where the heartbeat is, which gives me a good indication also of the baby's position. I can feel the head, I can feel even the length of the baby. I can feel a lot through my hands. And because I do that with her every single visit, I really have a good idea of how the baby's growing, the size of the baby, the position of the baby, how low the baby is. And through my hands, I'm able to really see a lot. And so I'm really a lot less concerned and a lot less nervous, especially because I often know her history. I've cared for the same woman sometimes 3-4 times. So especially if I know her history and I saw with ease, how do I say this? If I saw a baby be born, if I saw her give birth to a baby and I was with her and I saw how easily that big baby came out, I'm going to remind her of that. Like when, if her doctor says, wow, your baby's so big, I'm going to remind her like how all her eating has really paid off and how big babies nurse better and they sleep better and they thrive and her body can birth a big baby. And sometimes all she needs is just a reminder. Yeah, you're right, I can do this. So a midwife and a doula and in my opinion, in every good midwife, there's a doula. And in my opinion, in every doula, there's a potential to have some aspects of a midwife, maybe not the actual hands-on health care, but a midwife and a doula are actually a lot more closely related than I think some people would think. Okay, a doula is not a healthcare provider. She's a person who provides moral support and physical support, holding the woman, supporting the woman, massaging the woman, helping the woman in all sorts of physical ways in labor, but not healthcare. She won't take blood pressure, and she won't check dilation, and she won't listen to heartbeat, and she won't do those sort of hands-on health things. She won't actually receive the baby. So it's a little bit different, but I think that some aspects of this, the coaching and the support and the physical support need to be embodied in every good midwife, because a midwife isn't just someone who takes notes and steps in with her gloves when the baby's ready to be born. A midwife is someone who's really there for the woman and with the woman. That's what midwife means, is with woman. So I'm a little bit veering off, but this is just part of it. I'm sorry if you really just clicked on here for a 3-minute, is my baby too big or what? But what you're really getting is a whole midwifery experience. So I'm hoping that you'll listen. I'm hoping that you'll stay tuned in. Basically, ask questions. If your baby is really, if there's a problem with the baby, sometimes there's another. If you can ask the right questions, you get all the information, and then you can take it and you can look at all the information. If you just hear the fear, the nervousness, the hesitation on the part of the care provider to support you in the way you want to be supported, you need more information. So being able to communicate with your care provider, and don't put your care provider up on a pedestal. The care provider is you're employing the care provider. And I know that's not the way that most, women think of it, but the care provider is really working for you and working for your baby. And so you trust them to make good decisions, but you also need to get information so that they can get you information that you can't get for yourself, but with that information you're empowered to make good decisions. And you should ideally get a care provider for yourself early on who will support your good decisions, and you trust enough to listen to them when they say, this isn't a good decision. And then you want to find out, well, okay, so why? And how can we work with the situation? So many women are left with a really, not enough time to build the relationship with the care provider, not enough information with which to ask questions. Some women, they hear their care provider is nervous, they don't really understand why, the visit was rushed, and before they know it, they're signed up for an induction, they're signed up for a C-section, they're being told, your baby's going to get stuck, your baby might die. I am just so tired of hearing your baby might die. We don't tell that to women in order to force them into making decisions that they don't feel right about. We don't threaten, because there's no way that we could know. And a care provider is always going to do, ideally, everything in their power to make sure the baby doesn't die. Unfortunately, they've got a lot more that plays into the decision-making cocktail than just what's right for the baby, what's right for the woman. They've got to answer to how it looked on paper, what decisions they made that led up to certain things. There are probably more surprises in birth that physicians, even the most careful physicians, didn't foresee than actual emergencies that arose out of, oh, your baby's too big, it might not come out. Most of the time when they say that to a woman, even if she goes on to deliver her baby vaginally, she delivers fine with no problem. No shoulder dystocia, which means the baby's head gets stuck at the shoulders after the head is born, that the shoulders can't be born easily, and it's a really terrible and scary emergency for the provider as well for the woman, and it can be very dangerous for the baby if not addressed and not dealt with. But it's very rare, but it's a big fear, and you should know that it's a big fear, and with good reason. It can be very scary if it happens, but most of the time it won't happen. And, so I just want to say, I want to end with a story. A woman we helped twice in the practice that I was trained in. She had big babies. I'm talking probably 9.5 to 10 pounds. I don't remember exactly. And the interesting thing about her was she was really small, maybe under 5 feet tall, petite. And she didn't have a very big belly. The first time we cared for her, she called us, and we barely made it. I mean, literally, if we got in the car right when she called us, 45 minutes later the baby was out. And we're talking about falling out. A huge baby just falling out of this tiny woman. And so the second birth is the same situation, only we knew this time that it was going to be fast. And so the same thing happened. She had a really large baby, and it was all we could do just to tell her, basically, I don't know, I think the preceptor midwife just made a joke about, okay, stand on your head, we're on our way. Literally it was all she could do to just, in retrospect, we really should have just taught her how to be safe and catch her own baby, because when a woman is holding back in the pushing stage, it's really, really uncomfortable, and it doesn't really promote a good birth experience necessarily, because she's often very traumatized about oh, they told me not to push. We don't tell women not to push. If your baby's coming out, just let your baby come out. Get down on something soft, and try to just stay calm, knowing that when babies are coming out, there's rarely any problem. Okay? It's usually when babies aren't coming that's more of the issue. But when a baby's coming out, it's not an emergency. It's an emergence. See? So with that, I think that it probably would just give you more questions. If I haven't answered your questions, you can post to me, you can write me, you can join the group, the Ask a Midwife group. All the information is below. Please subscribe, and please show your support by liking or commenting. Okay, so I hope to give you more of this content. And once again, this is just a little bit of my thoughts about big babies and how they come out. Thanks.